Unit 7, Day 1 video notes, graphing in two variables. Okay, so we're going to use a t-chart here, meaning generally that we're going to pick the x value and then plug that in for x and calculate the y value. So we want to graph this, and we need positive and negative values. So I'm going to start off with 0 for x, somewhere near the middle, so I have some room. Okay, so if I plug in 0, and all I'm doing is I'm just taking that 0 and I'm substituting it right here for x. And when I do that, I'm going to get 2 times x, or 2 times 0 is 0, plus 3 gives me 3. Okay, so let's try another value. Let's try 2. So 2 times 2 is 4, plus 3 is 7. Okay, let's try 4. So when I plug that in, 2 times 4 is 8, plus 3, that takes me off the graph. So let's try a smaller number. I'm going to go ahead and take that 4 away, and we'll try 3. So 2 times 3 is 6, plus 3 is 9. Okay, and if we want to, we can fill this in. We could put a 1 right here, and so 2 times 1 is 2, plus 3 gives me 5. And so I'd have a 5 right there. Now I need some negative values. So negative 1, let's start with that. Negative 1 times 2 gives me negative 2. Negative 2 plus 3 is positive 1. Let's try negative 2. Negative 2 times 2 is negative 4. Negative 4 plus 3 gives me negative 1. Okay, so we need a negative 3. Negative 3 times 2 is negative 6. Negative 6 plus 3 is negative 3. Okay, let's put in a negative 4. Negative 4 times 2 is negative 8. Negative 8 plus 3 is negative 5. Okay, and I need a little bit of room here. I'm going to extend the page. I'm going to put in a negative 5 here. But then I'm going to scroll back up so that we can see the equation. So negative 5 times 2 gives us negative 10. Negative 10 plus 3 gives me negative 7. And, well, we'll try one more. We'll put in a negative 6. So negative 6 times 2, negative 12. Negative 12 plus 3 gives me negative 9. And I'm going to scroll so I have room to write it. Negative 9. Okay, I think we have enough now. We have some ordered pairs here. I'm not going to worry about writing out the ordered pairs, but let's go ahead and graph them, and you'll have to bear with me. I'm going to use the computer to graph because of the inaccuracy on the smartboard. So first we have an x value of 3 and a y value of 9. So let's go over here. X is 3, and then we go up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And we're going to put a dot right there. And then we've got 2 and 7, which will put us, there's 2 and 7, 1 and 5, 3 and 0, negative 1 and 1. I believe you can begin to see a pattern here already. Negative 3 and negative 1. Wait a second here. Negative 2 and negative 1. There we go. negative 3 and negative 3, negative 4 and negative 5, negative 5 and negative 7, and negative 6 and negative 9. So we have this line that has begun to form here, and I'll see if I can draw something that looks halfway like a line, and no, I can't really. But you get the idea. We can put a line through that. Hopefully when you're doing it on your paper, and feel free to ask for graph paper from me to do this. I don't have any problem with you using graph paper, although you're welcome to freehand your graphs as well. But you get the idea. We came up with some points by using the t-chart. We plotted those points and then we put a line through them. Okay, now let's move on to this next one. This one isn't as hard as it looks. I want you to solve the equation if x and y are whole numbers. And remember, the whole numbers are the counting numbers plus 0. So there are no negative numbers here. And that's one of the keys, is we can't go any lower than 0 on either x or y. So it's because it says if x and y are both whole numbers. Also, there are no fractions involved. So let's go ahead and start off with the smallest number of x that we can use, and that would be, of course, 0. And then we're going to plug it in for x. Oh, wait, we've got one more thing we need to do before we get that far. Let me back up here. And that is, let's put this equation into a form that's easier to work with. Let's solve for y. We're going to put it into what's actually slope-intercept form, which you'll learn more about later, but we're going to solve for y, get the y by itself, so that when we plug in x, it's easy to find what y equals. So we need this y by itself. We're going to move the x squared, and we're going to do that by subtracting it from both sides of the equal sign. Sorry, did I say x squared? Negative 2x. We're going to subtract 2x from both sides, leaving us with y equals negative 2x plus 6. And then we will just take our x values and plug them in for x. Let's see if I can make that 2 look any more like a 2. And of course this board's off pretty badly. So I'm going to rewrite the equation. Y equals negative 2x plus 6. That's better. Much better. Easier to read. Okay. So now if we plug in 0, again right here for x, then 0 times negative 2 is still 0. Add 6 and y equals 6. Okay, what about 1? If we plug in 1, 1 times negative 2 is negative 2, plus 6 is 4. We'll try 2. We plug in 2. 2 times negative 2 is negative 4. Negative 4 plus 6 is positive 2. Okay, we'll plug in a 3. Negative 2 times 3 is negative 6. Negative 6 plus 6 is 0. And that's as far as we go, because the next values we get would be negative. So we can't go any farther. And now we just need to write our answer. Let me scroll down a bit here. So what do we have? We're going to go ahead and write the ordered pairs. We have 0, 6. We have 1, 4, 2, 2, and 3, let's make that a comma, 0. And that's the entirety of the solution set here. We can't go any lower than 0 on x, or any lower than 0 on y. So those 4 ordered pairs are the entire solution set. Okay, Let's move on now to finding the slope of the line. Now the first thing, slope is rise over run. Rise being how far do we go up? So if we're going down, it's going to be negative. And run being how far do we go across? And generally we're going to measure that left to right so that, again, and that's the way you read from left to right. We're going to measure it left to right so that it makes it so that if our rise, if the line's going up as you go left to right, slope's positive. If it goes down as you go left to right, slope's negative. Now, in this case, they gave us the coordinates of some points. So how would we measure rise? Well, rise is the change in the y value. The y value determines how far up or down we are. And run, that's the change in the x value. So, in effect, this is the same thing as change in this pyramid here. We refer to as delta y, change in y, over delta x, or change in x. So to do that, we're going to subtract. And we can subtract in either of two orders. That doesn't matter. The critical thing is that we have to subtract both the x's and the y's in the same order. So I'm going to do both of them here. So the first one, I will start with the numbers in the first ordered pair. So I've got 3 minus 8 over negative 2 minus 4. Now let me set up the other side while I'm at it so you can see the comparison. Now I'm going to start with the second ordered pair. So I have 8 minus 3 and 4 minus negative 2. Now that's an important distinction. Make sure that you have both the minus and this negative 2 from this number right here. Make sure that both of them are there and that you deal with that appropriately. Now let's go ahead and deal with solving this. So I'm going to do the one on the left here first. Well, 3 minus 8 gives me a negative 5. And negative 2 minus 4 gives me a negative 6. The negatives are going to cancel each other out, leaving me with 5 over 6 for my slope. Okay, let's do the subtraction on this other side. Well, 8 minus 3 gives me a positive 5. And this 4 minus negative 2, that's the same thing as 4 plus 2. Because, of course, this plus and this minus cancel each other out. So now 4 plus 2 is 6, so I'm going to have 5 over 6. And you'll notice that they both gave me the same answer. It doesn't matter which direction, as long as I subtract in the same direction for both of them. If I should happen to subtract in different directions, I will get the wrong sign on my answer. And the wrong sign on the answer will mean that the answer is wrong. So watch out for that. Be careful. Okay, horizontal and vertical slopes. Last thing we need to deal with here. Now, as I mentioned before, slope is rise over run. And just for your information, I'm going to put in this line here. This line, its equation is y equals 3. Because if you look at that, it doesn't matter what my x values are. I could have an x value here, or an x value here, or an x value over here, and it doesn't matter, the y value is still 3. And that gives me a horizontal line that goes through 3 on the y-axis. Okay, so now, that being the case, they want to know what the slope of this is. So let's see here. My rise rise is 0. And it doesn't matter how far I go, I can go to infinity, and my rise is still 0. So I've got a slope of infinity, 0 over infinity. Well, this still works because 0 divided by anything is still 0. So I have a slope of 0. Not a problem there. Now let's look at the other case here, a vertical line. Well, first of all, what is the equation of this line? Well, let's see, it goes through -5 on the x-axis. The equation is x equals -5. Because it doesn't matter what my y value is here. It could be 6, it could be 1, it could be -3. That doesn't matter, x still equals -5, regardless what the y value is. So now let's take a look at what the slope looks like here. Again, rise over run. Well, my rise now is the one that is infinite. No matter how far I go, I still have a run of 0. Okay, I have a problem here. I cannot have 0 on the bottom of a fraction. It's not allowable. Not allowable to have 0 on the bottom of a fraction. So what does that mean? That means when I have a vertical line, the slope is undefined. Your book will say that it has no slope. This is not the same thing as a slope of 0. The one above where we had a horizontal line, it had a slope of 0. This one has no slope. You can see why I prefer the term that the slope being undefined. Nevertheless, make sure that if you see a question that asks which one has no slope, you know that it means the slope is undefined and that it's a vertical line, not that the slope is 0 and it's a horizontal line.